Welcome into episode 187 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. Bruins take a 1-0 lead in the series over the Florida Panthers last night. Not their greatest effort, I think, by any stretch of the imagination, but good news that they were still able to take the one-game lead in the series, no?
Yeah, I mean, the first period in particular, I thought they were pretty evenly matched. They get the Pastrnak goal on the power play. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to get into. Florida, we knew coming into the series was going to be a very highly penalized team, second highest penalized team in the NHL. And that ended up getting them into trouble and getting them in the hole because the Bruins' first goal comes on the power play. Really smart pass from Bertuzzi to set up Pastrnak. And we'll get into Bertuzzi as well. But I think we should start with the lines because we had talked about on Sunday or in Sunday's practice, they had the lines set up with Zacha centering the first line, Bertuzzi, Krejci and Pastrnak, and then Hall, Coyle, Frederick, and we were wondering if they were really going to go with that, and we get the answer. Bergeron doesn't come out for warm-ups. He was listed as a game-time decision, but that's not – I don't think that was actually what happened because after the game I asked Zacha when did he know he was going to be in on that first line, and he said this morning. So it wasn't like, okay, we're heading out and Bergeron's not good to go right now, like an hour before the game. I think it was known a bit earlier than that. So anyway, the Bruins depth was able to really overcome that. Missing your top line center is not usually easy for any team, but Florida wasn't able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and for a little while it wasn't easy for them. I mean, they didn't play great hockey for the first half of that game. They led 2-0. They, as you mentioned, the great play in the power play by Bertuzzi to set up Pastrnak, and then Marchand gets softy where Alex Lyon just can't get a long wrist shot with his glove. But other than, Florida controlled play through the first period and a half, and wondering, okay, like, do they miss Bergeron? Are they going to struggle? As the game went on, they had a really strong third period. So, yeah, it does highlight their depth. It also highlights the importance of goaltending because both goalies made some great saves, some point-blank saves, but Alex Lyon also made a couple of mistakes, and Linus Ullmark did not. And, there were questions around Ullmark going in as well because last time we saw him, he was leaving a game, last Tuesday and didn't return. He didn't travel to Montreal, was on the ice this weekend, but, still because Montgomery didn't name his game one starter until warmups, basically, like we didn't know for sure that he was 100% totally fine, no issues. He certainly looked 100% totally fine. Like I thought Ullmark was great and was even more so than the Bruins' depth was the biggest reason that they're up 1-0 right now.
And when in the morning they recalled Brendan Bussey, and so that was kind of a panic situation where it's like, okay, who's not going? But Swayman ends up, because we had heard Swayman was dealing with an illness. Swayman ends up backing up. Ullmark starts. So when you see Brendan Bussey recalled from Providence, you're like, uh-oh, that's not good. One of the goalies isn't good to go, but it turned out that both of them were able to dress and be there.
So Bergeron's out of the lineup to start the game, and I want to get to that in a little bit as well. But one of the effects of that is Scott, you alluded to it earlier on, which is the Pastrnak power play goal to start the game. And with Bergeron out of the lineup, it became pretty obvious who they were going to put out for that first power play unit, or opportunity, I should say. And it was Zacha, Bertuzzi, McAvoy, Pastrnak, and who am I missing? Who
Krejci?
else is on there? No. Krejci. Yeah, Krejci. Thank you. So, and we talked about how that unit looked really good down the stretch since the trade deadline. And with the absence of Bergeron in the lineup, they get the first crack and they get the first goal. And so I guess my question to you guys is like, should this just be the go-to unit off the top, even if Bergeron comes back? I'm not saying that the Bergeron unit doesn't get, 40, 50 seconds, but should this unit get the first minute 10?
Well, that was my idea, when this unit really started to get hot. Like, I wrote about it, I asked that question, like, should this just be their top unit? And then they went back to the regular top unit of Lindholm, Pastrnak, Bergeron, Marchand, DeBrusque, and they had a pretty good stretch for a few games for about a week, like after that. So I thought even that unit started to get going again. I guess, the bigger takeaway and the more encouraging sign for the Bruins is just that their power play in general, period, has looked better for a couple of weeks now. And whatever unit is out there seems to be getting better entries, moving the puck better, more body movement, guys popping up in different spots. Like even on that goal, like the play to set it up, it's McAvoy and Krejci kind of passing back and forth a little bit. The one time is not really there. They don't have a great shot. What then opens it up is Zacha pops out from the bumper into more of the high slot area, takes a pass, pivots, and hits Krejci for the one timer. Like that's something like we just weren't seeing enough of, was guys being willing to move out of, like their set spots. So that was key. So yeah, I mean, I really like this unit. They've looked good basically every time they've been together. But I did also think that the regular top unit was starting to look better down the stretch as well. So, I guess at least like you just feel better about the Bruins power play in general. But yeah, it is really nice to be able to have that unit to turn to when Bergeron's out of the lineup.
Yeah, and for me, the very first power play of the game did not start out great. So there was a moment where it was like, oh God, that's not really what you want to see. But the Bruins end up getting a second power play in the first period, and that's the one that they end up scoring on. So the first power play had a lot of trouble getting it in the zone and keeping possession. A lot of clears by Florida. They had to make an adjustment, and on the second power play, they end up, getting the Pastrnak goal. But it already has come to bite Florida in the butt that they have taken some undisciplined penalties, and we knew that was the kind of team they could be. And that's not how they have to play if they're going to try to win this series against the Bruins, who, power play at times had not been good in the middle of the season, but it seems to be working fine now. And you never want to give Pastrnak more chances than you need to. And he's going to get more looks on the power play. So I'm not concerned about the power play, but it did start out kind of shaky. Like we mentioned, the first period of the game, maybe the first half of the game, they weren't quite themselves, but they're able to still score. And like you mentioned, Scott, have the lead. And, you can't let the Bruins score first if you're the Panthers either. You don't want them to be playing from a position of, comfortability with the lead like that. And they had a chance to extend the lead a few times, but Lyon was playing really well for like the first period, and he stopped a few like rush chances. And in particular, there was one Taylor Hall set up for Frederick that I'm not sure how he stopped. And I looked over at Scott and I was like, you were worried about Sorokin, but this kid's playing like so well. And then of course he lets in that softie from Marchand and had some other lapses later in the game. The one where I thought he threw in the puck on the one they called back, but because Hathaway hit it out of his glove. But I was like, wow, that is an all-time terrible goal to give it if he just accidentally whipped it into his own net. But we can talk about the goaltending too. But it was just, at times he looked so good, you kind of got nervous. And then he did some other rookie things. It was his first ever playoff game. And we mentioned he only had played, I think, 15 or 16 games in the regular season.
Yeah, he had some phenomenal saves. You mentioned the one on Frederick, which, by the way, like starts because Taylor Hall is able to take advantage of Radko Gudas going for a patented, open ice body check, hip check, and Scott made mention of this in the series preview that like the Panthers defense, like, yeah, they can play physical. Like Montour likes to play physical, from UMass Bridget, and Gudas likes to play physical, but they sometimes do so at the risk of getting out of position and running around, leading to opportunities. So yeah, that was a great save by by Lyon, but but it was the Bruins taking advantage of some poor defense there. But I think in general the Bruins are kind of lucky that Lyon did let in some softies, right? The Marchand one, the DeBrusk one, just sitting on his pad, because if you're gonna have those goals go in for you, it's good that it happened in game 1 of round 1, because that's when you kind of need some puck luck, because Montgomery mentioned it afterwards. He said they were kind of surprised and not really ready for the playoff speed, which we've talked about for months now with them not having very meaningful games. So I thought Florida took it to them, and I think the Bruins will take it to them for the majority of the series going forward. But they kind of caught the Bruins off guard. They had some guys that are feeling sick, whatever the reason may be. So if there was going to be a night where the Bruins kind of got away with some fortunate goals, game 1 was the one to do it.
Yeah, if you're Florida, like, it's going to be really interesting to see how they respond, because that's going to be such a discouraging loss. Like, everything was lined up for them to win game 1 and, make things interesting. Like, no Bergeron, some sort of bug running through the team. The Panthers have been playing do or die, borderline playoff hockey for months. The Bruins haven't. They've been locked into the top seed for seemingly months. Like, everything was lined up there for the Panthers to potentially steal one. They get off to the better start. They're controlling play. And yet, like, their goaltending falters a little bit. They can't beat Ullmark. I had mentioned this, like, in my preview, the Panthers, they create a lot of chances. They are not a great finishing team. Their defensemen take a lot of shots, and they're banking on deflections and rebounds. They want to create chaos around the net. And I thought at times they did, but Ullmark just looked like the Ullmark we've seen all season. He was just very calm. He made some saves on deflections. He was finding rebounds, covering stuff in traffic. Like, you didn't see what you saw with Lyon, where, you mentioned that DeBrusk goal where it's Bertuzzi banging away and he doesn't really know where the puck is and it's on his pad. Even the first goal, that you look at that Krejci shot, like, Lyon more or less gets square. Like, he gets across the crease to where he needs to get to. But look at his reaction when that Krejci shot hits him. He has no idea where that rebound is. Like, he's looking around, he's looking over his shoulder, and you just didn't see that from Ullmark. Like, Ullmark just looked totally in control, where he knew exactly where the puck was at all times. He knew where his rebounds were going. Montgomery said that after the game when I asked him about Ullmark. He was just directing pucks, away from them into, bad areas for the Panthers, good areas for the Bruins. And it's so frustrating if you're an opponent, because it's like you can have all this other stuff happening where the Bruins, have a key player out or 2 key players out, and you think you're playing pretty well against them. And then it's like, oh yeah, they have the Triple Crown Vezina Trophy winning, like, historically great goalie in net, and good luck, you got to find a way to beat him. It's like, it's a video game where, like, you beat all these levels and you're going through and you're like, you're feeling good about yourself. And then there's like this final boss that's just impossible to beat. And you're like, what the hell? This game sucks. Like, this
you throw the controller and you quit.
Like, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he looked very confident, Ullmark, which is not, it's not unexpected. But I saw this column from Sarah Sivian this morning that said something to the effect, the title is something to the effect of Panthers lose their best opportunity to steal series. They had Bergeron missing right there. They had potentially some guys sick. They had some guys returning to the lineup. Talking about the Bruins, they had some guys returning to the lineup that hadn't played in a long time, in over a month, that, maybe could have been exposed if you say Forbort, you use your speed a little bit better. They did not expose the Bruins, I wouldn't say weaknesses, but, the differences in their lineup that they could have. And the one goal that does come on Ullmark was the Tkachuk goal, and it comes from a really bad turnover from Orlov, chipping a puck on the backhand into the center of the zone, like right in front of your goalie. Never, the best way to start the breakout. So that was an ugly turnover. That's the only goal that Ullmark ends up giving up. And I mean, you're turning the puck over to their best goal scorer, right in front of the net, where with the rest of your defense not in position. And that's a fixable mistake, though. And I thought that for the most part, that McAvoy-Orlov pair they had some really strong stretches, but that sticks out as a pretty big mistake.
I mean, some could call it a mistake. Others could call it a pretty sick pass to the wrong team. Obviously, I'm kidding. What did you guys make of Forbort's return to the lineup? We talked about him last episode about potentially going in over Grzelcyk, who might be battling some sickness or whatever. But how did you feel like he acclimated?
I thought he was solid. I mean, I think he spent it's interesting because I feel like when you put Forbort in, like you're gonna be conceding a little bit of possession and zone time, but your expectation is that he's gonna hold up and do his job when he does have to spend time in the D zone. And I thought he did. Like I thought, yeah, he probably spent more time in his own zone than you would like, but he does a good job of keeping guys to the outside, blocking shots, preventing guys from getting to the front of the net, kind of keeping things under control. And, he was obviously a big part of the penalty kill, which goes 2 for 2 and doesn't give up a single shot on goal. So that was another huge plus. So, I thought he basically did what was expected of him. And you see why Montgomery wants him in the lineup. Montgomery said after the game, that's basically it. Like it's the D zone stuff. They know 5-on-5 possession transition wise, they're not as good with Forbort in the lineup as they are with Grzelcyk. It's, I think their approach is like the Florida, they're so good offensively and they're good forechecking and on the cycle. They're going to get some time almost no matter who's in there. And so they're going to put in the guy that they think is going to hold up better against that. Forbort, all of them can look pretty. It's not to be with him. He did his job. It's so like complain.
Yeah, so Bridget, I think Scott said that Forbort was the best player on the ice last night. If I can read between all those lines.
You're gonna get Scotty a better laptop or something, because this platform that we record on plus Scott's computer is just not a match made in heaven.
He's back. He's ready for his next shift. I can see him. No more lag right now. And Bridget, I'll throw it to you. But yeah, I just feel like there's a lot of plays I feel like that can just die offensively for Florida in the Boston zone. Like sometimes it is like when they're in the O zone, the Boston D zone, their O zone, like they'll rim it around the boards and try to switch possession on the other side of the O zone. But like Forbort can like cut that off behind the net. And he can do that with his frame and stature, and he can just let that play die on his stick and just like go the other way with it. And he can absorb like a check or two behind the net and still get that puck to his partner or the center. Whereas as gifted as a skater and as good as a passer as Grzelcyk is, he's not better than Forbort at doing that. Forbort can let plays die for Florida behind the Bruins net with his size, just his size, and just like literally just blocking a puck on the boards and like eating a couple of hits. Matt can do that too, but not as frequently and as effective as Forbort can. And I think that's what you're referring to, Scott, about when Montgomery kind of values him in the D zone.
Yeah, and I also thought that he killed plays in front of the net, right? Rebound chances. He was clearing guys out from in front of Ullmark, allowing Ullmark to see the rebound chance or finding it and getting it out and just taking away the space for the Panthers to get into that area in front of the net, because he's a big guy and you can't easily push him out of that spot if he's got position on you. And I thought Orlov did a good job of it as well, but it saved the Bruins not giving up second chance opportunities to have stronger, bigger defensemen in that area clearing out the front of the net. So I think it killed those second chance opportunities as well. And you could see the benefit of it. Grzelcyk obviously you could go with him as well. But I did notice some of the physical play with Orlov and Forbort making a difference. So I think it was one of you that mentioned, I think it was you, Brian, that the matchup probably dictated Forbort over Grzelcyk because it's Florida. And, if you drew a different opponent in the first round, maybe Grzelcyk would be your guy. But Montgomery seemed like it wasn't hesitant to make that change to Forbort. He didn't look rusty. So that was good because we had questioned that. And we actually questioned whether or not he'd be in the lineup at all in game one. But both him and Foligno come back. Scott, I don't know if you had any final thoughts on Forbort, but we could also talk about Foligno in his first game back.
No, it just, it is interesting. Like, I do wonder if, say, Florida continues to control 5-on-5 play like they did more in the first half of the game. Like, would we see Grzelcyk come in at some point if the Bruins thought, hey, we need a better transition game. We need more possession. We want to spend more time in their zone. Like, I could potentially see that, but for now, it looks like, all things considered, the game one formula with Forbort in worked pretty well. And the Bruins did find their 5-on-5 game, especially in the third period, where, they outshoot the Panthers 13-8 and really kind of, gave up a couple good chances, but really for the most part, didn't give them any openings to start a comeback. So you figure if they can play more like that, then, then you're not really thinking about making a change on the back end as of now.
And you're also without your top defensive forward. And I think maybe that may have played into it a little bit too. Let's say it was a game time decision between Forbort and Grzelcyk, which it wasn't, because I think Montgomery said earlier in the day he was in, that Forbort was going to be in. But knowing that Bergeron wasn't going to be in the lineup, maybe that was more reason to kind of just go the more defensive third pair there. So, Bridget, you mentioned Nick Foligno. Yeah, low key, his return to the lineup in a couple of months, right? So, to my eye, he looked fine. All things considered, I think he'll just keep getting better and better with more reps. How did you guys feel like he was?
Yeah, I think fine is probably the right way to put it. Like, you didn't see him, have like a ton, like a burst of speed or anything really. He was involved in, some scrums, some physical plays, board battles, but like didn't think he was overly physical. So probably a little bit of, first game back, finding his game, finding his timing, his feel, all that. So probably to be expected a bit, but I think certainly as he settles into the series, like if he is feeling good, he's a guy you can definitely see, making a difference. The way that you saw, Bertuzzi and Hathaway like really bring some energy. Orlov at times, bad turnover aside, I thought Orlov, other than that, played really well. Foligno's another one of those guys who like just fits that playoff mold, and you hope as he gets, a couple games under his belt, gets closer to being fully back up to speed. But yeah, an encouraging first game back. He didn't look way off the pace or anything like that. So all things, I thought that fourth line in general had a good game. Like Nosek, really key again, 10 of 14 on faceoffs. They had a lot of defensive zone shifts. They saw a lot of Barkov. Hathaway, the goal that wasn't, but he was all around it all night in the middle of a lot of stuff. So we've talked about how that fourth line, it kind of has an attitude and an entity. And I thought you saw that. And I think as Foligno gets going even more, you're only going to see even more of that because he can bring all of that.
Yeah, he had the fewest minutes of anyone on the ice, which I mean, not super surprising. He had just under 9 minutes, but he, like you said, kept pace. And this is the kind of series they need him, right? They have other guys that can step up and be physical, like Hathaway, but Foligno is somebody that's not going to take, some of the cheap shots and some of the after the whistle stuff. So when we're talking about a grittier matchup with Florida, you look to Nick Foligno to handle some of that stuff that happens after the whistle. And the game started out really chippy in that there was some pretty dirty plays coming from Florida. And I think maybe the first 5 minutes, I was just sitting there going, oh my God, they're going to murder like everyone on this team until there's no one left. Like there was a cheap shot at Pastrnak. There was Marchand got high sticked in the face. Like they were coming out swinging, and you need guys on your team that can kind of put an end to that. And Foligno is one of those guys.
Well, speaking of getting high sticked in the face, Bridget, you sent Scott and I a video before we started recording of you getting hit in the face with a couple of microphones during the scrum with Tyler Bertuzzi. So I think, which was funny, but
I needed Nick Foligno.
What's that?
I needed Nick Foligno to come in and clear him out and protect me. I literally got hit with 2 mics at the same time to the point where I couldn't even see Bertuzzi anymore. I was pissed.
Well, he made his presence known last night. A couple assists in his first playoff game. Obviously, kind of had a viral video go around with him stealing the cousin's stick and just breaking it in the bench. And that
was hilarious. By the way,
it was, and that was him playing like the player and the agitator and pest that he was in Detroit. Like he came to Boston, and he kind of just seemed really well behaved and well mannered, and just kind of getting used to his environment. But clearly a player we all envisioned relishing the playoffs with Boston, and he is.
Yeah, and I like that after the game he acknowledged that was stupid. And he's like, yeah, there's going to be stupid things that happen, and that was one of them. And it's like, like stupid things don't really have to happen. Like you don't have to steal a guy's stick and bring it back to the bench. But by the way, like if he gets caught, it is a penalty. Like that's very obviously holding the stick. But
also, you're not allowed to have sticks. You're not allowed to have 2 sticks in your hands at any time. So no matter whose they are, like you're not even able to pick up your teammate's stick and try to give it to him. Like that's a penalty. You can't have 2 sticks.
Yeah, but like it's the kind of thing that like Brad Marchand would have done when he was younger and might still do at times, but certainly doesn't do as often. But like I know it's like, after it happened, Connor Ryan tweeted out the video of the game where Marchand tried to push Robbie Fabry into the Bruins bench, like as they were both leaving the ice, and he's just like shoving him into the bench. Like it reminded me of that, just like very annoying. Or you go back to like Montreal and going back like a decade, and Sean Thornton like squirting a water bottle at that guy. It's just like it doesn't serve any purpose other than just to be a pest, and that's part of what Bertuzzi brings. And, obviously beyond that, he played a great game. The 2 assists just come from being all around the net. He played the 3rd most minutes of Bruins forwards. Like that was a huge game. That line with him, Krejci and Pastrnak, in terms of ice time, was the top line, and they played like it.
You call it annoying. I call it entertaining. I was thoroughly amused by that. It's so stupid. And I once again, poor Scott has to sit next to me in the press box every game. So he has to listen to all my commentary. But I leaned over to him and I was like, I remember hating this guy when he was on Detroit and thinking he was like so annoying. But when he's on your team, it's just entertaining. Like when you're watching him play in Boston, you're like, that's funny. So I just watched him break it, and you see like the little bits of that side of his personality come out, as long as he keeps it under control. And I guess if you don't get caught, then it's fine. But I thought it was pretty funny, honestly. And to actually analyze his play on that line, that line had so much chemistry. That line was clicking. It was like they knew where each other were on the ice at all times without even like having to look around. Krejci, we always have said, kind of plays with the eyes on the back of his head, kind of sense of where people are. But I think Bertuzzi showed that with the pass to Pastrnak. And I also felt like they were making plays and thinking at a really high pace. The chemistry was there right away. We mentioned Bertuzzi and Pastrnak getting a lot of time together. Krejci and him had a little bit of time together before that, but now when you see that together as a line, it worked. It worked. I thought the chemistry was great.
So one player I wanted to bring up on the back end was Charlie McAvoy, and there was a play, I believe it was I want to say it was the earlier third period, and the Bruins were shorthanded. I think it was either Carter Verhaeghe or Sam Reinhart, who, in my opinion, should have been penalized 2 minutes for a clear boarding. And it was very, very obvious to me that it should have been a penalty. And I thought that McAvoy was potentially one of those concussions a la Carlo or Grzelcyk in playoffs past. And he finished the game and had some piss and vinegar in his next shift and took a run at Sam Reinhart. I guess my question to you guys is, do you feel like, A, he may have dodged a bullet there injury-wise, but B, since he did potentially dodge that bullet, perhaps that may have been a wake-up call for him to play with a little bit of edge that makes him one of the best defensemen in the league when he's on his game.
Yeah, I thought that clearly set him off, and understandably so. And yes, I do think he dodged the bullet because it was a high hit. It was hard. It was kind of from behind. Like, definitely could have done some damage. You know, you always worry about the whiplash effect or like the head getting pinned to the boards. You know, right after it happened, like I was watching him on the bench and I was waiting to see if anyone came down the tunnel to like pull him for a concussion check, and they didn't. He went right back out for his next shift like 40 seconds later. And yeah, like you said, like he just came out flying. Reinhardt plays a puck behind the net and McAvoy just steamrolls him from behind. And it was almost like, okay, like you're not going to call it, then fine, I'll play that game. And yeah, I thought he had a really good game overall. I thought him and Orlov together, again, the one Orlov turnover aside, was very good. They were on the ice a lot, facing, the Panthers' top two lines. And McAvoy I just think looked confident and poised, especially in his own zone. Like, maybe wasn't quite as involved offensively. Orlov definitely was. Orlov led the team in 9 shots on goal, but McAvoy, I just thought, played a really strong, solid game and definitely seemed to kick it up a notch after taking that hit, whereas like, all right, like, screw this, you're not pushing me around, you're not knocking me down. Like, now you woke me up, like, deal with it.
Yeah, it was like, I'm not the hunted, I'm the hunter after that point. And, every time McAvoy comes up slow, or you see him take a hit high, that you can just sense the whole like energy get lower in the building, because it's always like worried immediately, because that's a guy that you can't have go down. And we got that for a second there, but I think Scott said it pretty well, and that pair worked, because we had talked about should they keep the like Lindholm, McAvoy, and Orlov all split onto different lines. Obviously, when Forbort comes back in, the natural fit for him is with Clifton, who also had a very physical game, not surprisingly, and laid some checks and added some energy. So he's one guy on the back end that really can do that for you.
Yeah, that's why I think he's an imperative guy to have in that lineup. And he's only like 5'10", I think, 5'11", but he plays much bigger than he is, and he's one of the most physical players in the Bruins. So there was never a doubt in my mind that Clifton would be a playoff regular for this team. I think Florida definitely had an admirable game. Certainly the first half of the game. I thought Alex Barkov was pretty quiet, but Matthew Tkachuk, obviously, they rode him to the playoffs, and he was their lone goal. So I don't know if there were too many surprises from what Florida showed us last night, and especially considering that was, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but like that we mentioned may have been their best bet to try to put some doubt into Boston. If the Bruins were to lose game 1 after that regular season that they had, and at home, and the inevitable headlines would have been out there, and the doubt would have crept in, and the Bruins they didn't allow that to happen. So I guess my only lingering thought from game one was just the absence of Bergeron. And look, if it was an illness that kept him out and he was, it was coming out of both ends for him or something like that.
Brian.
Well,
Brian.
I'm just trying to be blunt, like, because that's honestly, that's the only reason I could see him not playing was if he literally physically could not play. So
God, no, it's just the visual. I don't like.
Hey, look, I mean, I'm not. Your mind went there, not mine. I'm just telling the facts. But to me, that's the only like illness I feel like he would have not been able to play through would be some lingering stomach bug or something like that. But
which Pastrnak had.
Yeah, and so like if he got it from him, I guess my question is, it's a long way of saying, like, if he's resting down the stretch and he's not playing in the game 82 and he's not necessarily at every practice or every game, maybe he's not exposed to the illness when he got exposed to it, but certainly if it's an injury that kept him out, that he suffered in game 82 or game 82 prolonged, how can you not question the way that they handled him down the stretch? He's out now. They won the game, great, but like, you mean to tell me he plays like most of the season, like literally almost every single game this year, and then he's not ready to go for game one? It's fair to question why it's not ready to go for game one. Is it just bad luck, or like could they have handled it better now that we know that he's out for game one and maybe game two? Who knows?
There's one detail I want to add, which was that DeBrusk said he was around the team like the whole day, which illness, like you wouldn't want someone around. I would think you wouldn't want someone around if it was, contagious. Not really sure what the illness is, but.
And there was also the video of him like gathering the team in a huddle, so not only was he around, but like very close contact with his teammates. So
then it was injury. Then it's injury. So I guess to change the question to you, okay, yeah. What are you thinking?
Or it was he's over all the symptoms of whatever the illness was. But, Montgomery mentioned that Lauko lost 8 pounds when he was dealing with this. Like, maybe Bergeron's feeling better symptoms-wise, but he's lost 10 pounds over the last week, and his strength isn't there. He shows up to the building pregame, goes through a little bit of a workout, and realizes, like, I just don't have it. Like, I'm going to be exhausted 15 seconds into a shift. Like, that's the only thing I can think of, but yeah, I mean, we just don't know. And obviously, like, they're not telling us. Certainly, every indication leading up to the game was that, like, the illness was the bigger concern, because that's what Marchand mentioned on Sunday. He said, I think he's just sick. He's fine. Montgomery, when he was asked Monday morning at morning skate, he was asked, what's Bergeron's availability? He wasn't asked, is he sick? Is he injured? And Montgomery went directly to illness. He said, not only Bergeron, but we have a couple guys who are under the weather. So everything they were indicating was that the illness was the bigger issue. So I guess if you're to believe them, like, the scenario I laid out is the only thing I can think of is, okay, he's finally past the symptoms, but he just lost too much strength and hasn't, had enough time to recover in that respect. Obviously, yeah, it could be the injury. Like, they could just be kind of deceiving us and not giving us the whole story. So, as far as playing him in that last game, I just come back to, like, to me, that was planned out weeks in advance. Like, I had heard for a while that the plan was to play guys, and whoever they were going to rest, they were building in their rest in the weeks leading up to that. And Bergeron ultimately got 4 games of rest over about, a 3-week span. So I just think, like, if that was the plan, and if Bergeron's saying, I would rather have my rest before the end of the regular season and then play the last game, and the Bruins are looking at, all right, how do we, we've seen these other teams that maybe run away from the league, get to the play, fail in round 1. How do we avoid that? And this was part of their approach and part of what was planned out. Like, I don't have a problem with it. Like, I think they were trying to find ways to make sure they were better positioned to be ready to play playoff hockey game 1 than other teams that have been in their position. And yeah, I mean, any injury in that situation opens the door wide open for second guessing. I get it, but I don't have a problem with them planning that out in advance and trying what they thought was going to be best to be ready for game one. So I'm not going to second guess it because I didn't first guess it. I was okay with the plan from the start. So I'm, not going to go back now and be like, oh, they totally blew it.
Scott never second guesses himself. He's a very confident man.
Well, isn't that what a second guess is? Like you feel one way and then you're second guessing if you were right about feeling that way?
Yeah, but he's not. He feels like he
cool with
he knew all along.
Yeah, I guess so.
But so when you say
I
like,
just think they had a plan and sorry, I just think they had a plan and they stuck to it, and I'm not going to fault them for doing that. It's not like last minute Wednesday night before the Thursday game they decided who was playing and who wasn't. Like that they had that planned weeks in advance.
Well, I'm more so talking about just maybe in general down the stretch, not necessarily Montreal. Just in general, if maybe they could have rested a little bit more. But Bridget, you were saying something.
yeah, if it is a stomach bug, I really am glad that so far I haven't caught it, because when I was in Montreal, I talked to Bergeron fairly closely. That Pastrnak, when he had it out, like we were talking very closely. I'm glad I haven't gotten it. Could I afford to lose 10 pounds before beach season? Yes, but that's not how I plan on dropping that weight. So yeah, I mean, I wonder about how, like, if it's something that was as contagious as it sounds, that it passed through the team, why wouldn't you be separating guys? If that's the only thing that's crossing my mind with that. And anyway, we will find out soon enough, because Scott, you will be at practice today. So Monday morning, Scotty's heading over to practice and see if Bergeron's on the ice, see what's going on, and get some reporting from
Today's Tuesday, by the way.
Tuesday. I don't know what day it is. The game was Monday. Anyhow, Tuesday. Scott will have some reporting coming out after that. But in the meantime, so what I'm writing and posting today is about how Pavel Zacha did in filling in for Bergeron. And I think it's worth mentioning that he had modeled his game after Bergeron growing up, as a center, and he had referenced both Bergeron and Krejci as players that he wanted to model his game after. And he goes in for Bergeron, and it is kind of like he didn't miss a beat. And because of the style of play, his 200-foot game, his solid defense, like you don't really like. It was probably the ideal replacement for Bergeron. That's why you don't see Krejci step up there. You don't see Coyle step up there. It's Pavel Zacha, and he fit in. I thought he fit in really well. And I asked him after the game. Obviously, this was going to be the answer. Like, there's no replacing Patrice Bergeron. He's a Hall of Famer. But in my mind, Zacha did pretty much as well as anyone could have in stepping in for him.
Yeah, I agree. Like, he led the team in Corsi and expected goals. Like, they controlled play when they were on the ice, and they're one of the few lines that did that pretty consistently, start to finish in that game. And he was getting all the toughest matchups. Like, most of his minutes came against the Ekblad and Forsling pairing, came against Barkov, Verhaeghe, Kachuk. Like, there was no sheltering there. Now the minutes were down, so he finished at 1430, and that line in general didn't get the minutes that the Bertuzzi, Krejci, Pastrnak line did, which I don't know if that's just because sometimes that happens. Like, if you're going to get certain matchups, you end up not getting guys as much ice time. I also wondered if maybe someone on that line was dealing with a little bit of illness and couldn't handle bigger minutes. So the minutes were a little down, but when Zacha was out there, yeah, he was terrific. 5-on-5. I mentioned the power play, the way he pops out from the bumper. He's looked so good at center down the stretch whether it's been in place of Bergeron or in place of Krejci. it's like, we've talked about he definitely looks like he can be, second line center going forward. I see him with talented wingers, and I'm like, wait, can he be the top line center? Like,
well, yeah, and Montgomery said
it's
so
like
too. Montgomery said he's a top 2 center for us in the future.
Yeah, it's like he seems to fit anywhere. When he was with Bertuzzi and Pastrnak, that line looked good. Last night he's with Marchand and Dubrowski, looks good there. And it's like, I called him at times, especially early in the year, like Swiss Army knife, and that's what he is. He just fits wherever you put him, and he seems to make anyone he plays with better. He just makes a lot of good plays.
I think he makes life easier for people too because of his defensive style. And also, when you think about losing Bergeron, you're talking about not just losing him 5-on-5, but he is a penalty killer. He does spend time on the power play, and Zacha can do both of those things as well. Zacha is one of the better penalty killers on the team. He has been most of the season. So, Zacha, and in the future, if we're talking about seasons beyond this year where Bergeron's not in the picture anymore, it seems like they found another Bergeron in a sense in the style that he plays and the roles that he can play.
Yeah, I mean we talked about last summer, even before that, it was like, what's this team going to do when Bergeron retires? They don't have any high-end center prospects at the time. This is before last year's draft to speak of. There wasn't really anybody on the NHL roster outside of Bergeron. And, Don Sweeney goes out there and he signs 26-year-old or 25-year-old, I think, Pavel Zacha, who was a former number 6 overall pick with tons of potential. And now you're starting to see him reach that potential, or at least start to scratch the surface. And he's absolutely going to be their number 1 or number 2 center as soon as next year. And Ty Anderson tweeted out last night before the game, which correlates to this conversation. He said that going into last night, the Bruins without Patrice Bergeron this year were 4-0-0, 15 goals for, 4 for 8 on the power play, so 50%, and 17 for 17 on the penalty kill, 100%. Obviously, that's a super, super small sample, and I am in no way saying the Bruins are better off without Bergeron than with him. What I am saying is it's not all necessarily doom and gloom like we may have thought before they had signed Zacha. Now it's just kind of, okay, now when Bergeron goes, you just got to find one other guy, because let's assume Zacha replaces Krejci next year. You just got to find that next guy, and Zacha has really helped accelerate that transition to the post-Bergeron Krejci era, because now we know that he will be one of the 2 going forward.
Who needs Bo Horvat? We talked about that at the deadline. Like, who needs Bo Horvat? He hasn't even had a great time since he got traded. So,
and of course, now the Bruins are 5-0 after last night without Bergeron, and I'm not gonna do the quick math on what the updated special teams would be because I don't have it in front of me. But so again, just a little exercise, very small sample, but good to know.
Yeah, and by the way, like, just looking ahead, Georgi Merkulov had a terrific season in the AHL, especially in the second half. And Matthew Poitras, their second-round pick from this past draft, had a great year in the OHL. I believe he led the OHL in assists or was very close to it. So not saying like either one of those guys is ready next year or anything to play a top 6 role, but you at least see some upside now at the center position, even with prospects. So it's, you're still probably going to have like a shorter term solution, go out, trade for someone, sign someone, but like it could be a veteran who's just going to be a bridge to the next generation, because now you do actually have some promise in your system as well. And Zacha was just such a huge get. It looks like such a good fit to be one of those guys. And it's, in the course of one season, it's no longer nearly like as doom and gloom in terms of what the future looks like at the center position.
I mean, yeah, we just kind of got a little bit of a glimpse of it, and it was still enough to win a playoff game against a team that had a chance to kind of punch you in the face in game 1. So, I mean, you're looking at, we're getting ahead of ourselves now. we're talking about seasons, to come, but I don't think you're seeing a rebuild. Like, this isn't a team that's looking like it's set up for a rebuild. They have some really key guys knotted up. If you lose Pastrnak, you're looking at a rebuild, but they have a lot of the bases covered now. And Don Sweeney did a really good job over the last few seasons filling in for some of the shortcomings in the draft. And yeah, no, it just doesn't look like that's what's in the future for this team. Anyway, that is way beyond. Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
No, well, you just brought a thought into my head, and it's something that people were talking about like a month ago, and it was like, going forward, if you could only keep one, who would you keep, Orlov or Bertuzzi? And Scott, I know you're on a tight schedule, so I'll make this quick. But I feel like with the prospect of Mason Lohrei being ready to take that next step, hopefully maybe as soon as next year or certainly the year afterwards, like if you have Lindholm, McAvoy, and Lohrei, I think I would probably take that, because I feel like Tyler Bertuzzi is capable of giving you not everything, but a lot of what Brad Marchand has brought to you for the last 12, 13 years. And I feel like he might be somebody to kind of, again, as you mentioned, Bridget, they're not going to be rebuilding beyond Bergeron, but beyond Marchand. Like, could Bertuzzi kind of help alleviate that transition by just kind of replacing Marchand with a similar type player who's capable of playing top line minutes down the line? So you might not be able to keep a guy like Orlov or a couple others, but hopefully, I don't know. I'm wondering what you guys feel about the future of Bertuzzi in Boston potentially.
Yeah, well, and Bertuzzi's still in his prime years. He's still in his 20s. Orlov's north of 30. So, it also, like, I think if I were Bertuzzi, like, I'm certainly looking for a pretty big deal. This could be the biggest contract he gets. So it's going to be tough for the Bruins to keep him, but maybe they're able to find something. Maybe he really likes it here, and this is where he wants to be through his prime years. Orlov, we don't really know what he's going to be looking for. Like, would he be cool with a shorter term, maybe somewhat team friendly deal, or is he looking for one last big payday, knowing that like his next contract could carry him into like his late 30s? Like, is he looking for that? Because that would almost certainly have to come from elsewhere. I don't think the Bruins are going to be in a position to offer, a 31-year-old Orlov 6 years.
You think they would do like a 1 year for Bertuzzi, kind of like because he's had some bad injury luck, maybe like just like a 1 year fair value, just like prove it deal, and then like if you get like 60 plus points, like we'll lock you up at a fair price, or 70 points, whatever.
I mean, I'm sure the Bruins would love to do that, but I think that'd be bad advice to Bertuzzi if his agent is looking for something like that, honestly. Like, I think you look at the season he had last year with 30 goals and 60 points, a strong run with the Bruins down the stretch. You hope, project forward a little bit, a really strong postseason, a long run. I would not be looking short term or bridge or prove it or anything like that. I would be saying this is my prime. This is my 6 or 7 year deal. Like, let's be serious.
Yeah, I think he's going to get a lot of pretty sizable offers, more than likely. But who wouldn't want to play another 5-6 years with David Pastrnak? Because we already know he's going to be around for 8 more. So, I mean, if the prospect is that you get to play on a line with David Pastrnak for the next however many years, that might be a little tempting.
Yeah, so I guess we'll have to see, but there's tasks at hand, and we'll continue to cover it starting in about 23 minutes when Scott heads over to Warrior to update us on the latest line combinations and D pairs, who's out, who's in, blah blah blah. So Bruins are off until tomorrow night. And Bridget, Scott, if you have anything else to go over, now's the time. If not, we could probably wrap things up.
I think I'm all good. I am a little interested to see if the Panthers even like consider a goalie change, if there's any chatter around that. But, Paul Maurice after the game said he gave Alex Lyon an A+ for how he played, which I'm like, that seems a little talk about an easy grader. Like,
yeah,
guy got beat on a wrist shot that he
did go to Yale. He did go to Yale, so.
Those Ivy League schools, hard to get into, easy to get good grades at, though.
I have heard that. That was also the SID from Yale texting me that was the first time a goalie from Yale has ever started an NHL playoff game. I think ever played in an NHL playoff game. So, good for him. He had a mixed bag for sure. And I was wondering myself if we're going to see a goalie change after that. He had times where he stole some goals away from the Bruins. So, I mean, maybe you get the same score at the end of the day because he lets in 2 soft ones, but he also stopped 2 that should have gone in. So it's, we'll see.
Yeah, well, you're paying a guy $10 million to sit on the bench. You might as well see if he can be worth his value at some point, right? It's not like Lyon is like the next coming of Patrick Waugh. So, yes, he did save some goals that should have gone in, Bridget, but he also, some of those washed away with a couple of iffy ones. So, all right, Scott, you have to go to Warrior. I believe that probably wraps it up. Any final thoughts?
No, I'm good.
No.
All good.
Scott? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for listening. Bruins take a 1-0 lead in the best of 7 series, 3-1 over Florida. They play Wednesday night next in Boston, and we will talk to you very soon.